Double it. Everybody, I got bad news about the Flamingo. They have the batteries that came with it, and they just don't make Flamingo batteries like they used to. Who else has had that same complaint? It's kind of universal. And see, look, they just drop. This would be a really good thing. Someone walked down the hall, and I'm.
Have a USB-C.
I love the fact that there's a little thing for you put a screw to hold the battery pack on in case someone steals your Flamingo batteries. Okay, so we got to the turnpike. There will be a quiz on Tuesday. Well, Monday the reading assignment is due. Monday's a reading assignment, so I gave you a couple extra days. Remember that from yesterday? The quiz, so there might be a quiz, there might not be. But you have to be ready. But I tell you about it, just a 5-question quiz on Tuesday on the court cases. And I'm just going to list the 5 cases and then have 35 different choices for what the case stood for. 5. So like Marbury versus Madison, judicial review. McCulloch versus Maryland. What did McCulloch versus Maryland do? Yes or what? What did it do? Maryland.
National Day Congress.
Yeah, applied powers. Fletcher versus Peck. Which one did that do? What Fletcher versus Peck? For states, which wasn't accepted for about 60 years, 70 years. How about Gibbons versus Ogden? Yes, go ahead. Federal government can't regulate interstate commerce. That's crazy talk. But it's true. Can't. Did you say can't? Yeah. Ooh, okay. And last one. Last one. Government versus Woodward said what's sacred? And by definition, therefore, government will be on the side of whom? Power. So, all right. We got Britain 1, War of 1812, right on number 3, Transportation Revolution, which is the biggest. I mean, this is huge. So this is going to be a big factor. And turnpikes were private roads. What was the road built by the national government? But they built very few roads back then. Yeah. The what road? Oh yeah. I just didn't hear it. Yeah, national. Right. Macadamized. It's a national park now. It's really cool. Go. Same deal here. This bridge. I had to go take a picture of it. It was actually really cool. I like that. It's really impressive to see they built them the last. And you'll notice something. They built about 10,000 miles of road, but most of them were private. And the thing about it is, where do toll roads go? Toll roads have got to make money. Yeah. Only big cities. And so they're not, it was very incomplete. And we'll see the same things down the road for railroads. And that is why early on for cars, the decision was made that the United States government, AKA taxpayers, would pay for the roads and airports and harbors. We pay for that so others can use the roads. It's big aid for all kinds, but big aid for business especially. And 10,000 miles were built. To ship a ton of goods 1 mile cost about 15 cents in 1850 on a road. That means the price had about approximately halved. So the point is, prices dropped the more roads. But still, roads are more expensive than other forms, especially toll roads. If the federal government did not make roads and maintain roads, you would not see semis. Because it would be just far too expensive. So we taxpayers subsidize business a lot. Next one, same deal as canals. And canals, oh no, something bad happened.
Why is this working?
All right, gotta shut this off and turn it on again. Let me tell you, I'll tell you about monopolies down the road, but there's no incentive to improve your product if you have a monopoly. Do you?
You never really do improve your products. I mean, like the house and Bluebills don't really count as
Huh?
improving the products.
And what?
All your products.
Why?
Just raise the price.
Yeah, you just raise the price. There's no reason, and that's, let me give you an example of a monopoly. It's called Microsoft. They operate like a monopoly. Yeah, you're exactly right. And there's no reason to improve things.
That's right.
What's that?
I used to this song.
Yeah, Mac is a little better, but they're having the same issues on their phones. They're not- All right, here we go. So canals. Now, who proposed federal aid as part of the 3 laws he proposed? Federal aid for canals. Who proposed that? Yeah, Henry Clay. What was this? He had a system. What kind of system was it? The American system. But this was mostly state aid. For example, the state of New York would help with the Erie Canal. And 3,700 miles of canal would be built in the first 50 years of the 19th century. And the ton would drop down by, in some areas, especially in some areas for the canals, as much as a 90% drop to 1 cent a ton loss. Water transport is significantly cheaper than any place else because of the buoyancy. Chris, you got that? Because of the buoyancy. Okay, pay attention. And here's a canal, talking about canal boats. Industrial Revolution, you have all these canals being built in Britain in late 1790s. Here in the US, the teens through the 30s. Canal building would end very suddenly in 1830. But by 1830, you could go up the Hudson to Buffalo, which this is why Buffalo became a town, because of the canal, on Lake Erie, and then down here to the Ohio, down to the Mississippi, all connected by water. Revolutionary. Took a long time, but you could move heavy products now. And there would be a canal that would connect to the Chicago River and get to this little tiny place called Chicago. All connected by water. The Erie Canal would be the most famous canal in American history, almost completely funded by the New York State government. What's that, Andre? History of Chicago School? Yeah, it is cool.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, Chicago, once the railroads came, it went from being nothing to 1 million people in 40 years.
It went from being a little fort.
I count. And here it is, this whole system. And this would still be used well into the 1950s. Now it's mostly a national park. And all funded by state government. It would take 8 years to build. How did you build it back then? Mostly shovel. Immigrants to the United States would be the big laborers on it. And a couple things about this. First off, you can see how they pulled the boats. Every canal had to have a flat area next to it where mules, usually mules, could go along, pulling the keel boats. So there's a walking, it has to be flat too. And the water has to be all even level. Oh, by the way, how do you get a canal then to go uphill or downhill? What do you call those? Yeah. Yeah, what do we call them? They are gates, but someone said locks. Yeah, locks. And these locks, I think locks are just amazing bits of technology. I love locks. I love the older ones too. If you ever get a chance, go to a place you can see some of the old locks. But it's gonna be really flat. And so the Erie Canal is a national park. People will take these kind of slow-moving boats, but it's also really popular walking and biking place. It's just flat. And the other thing, can you see it? Look at this pig. Look at that thing. It's bigger than a house. It is a house. And that knee, what is wrong with that pig? That is shocking. One more thing I'll show you before we get to the end of the canal. The C&O Canal right here goes from just where the first rapids of Washington, D.C. Actually, it goes through Washington, D.C. This is where you can ride on a little boat and go through these 19th century locks. It's really fun. Okay, the first one's fun. Then it starts getting hot. But this is also a national park, but it's the most popular hiking destination in the United States. Because it's flat along the canal and it's just really very stable going up. It's absolutely beautiful there. And so if you, for whatever reason, you can't walk up hills, want a gradual but nice, pretty walk through the mountains, I would highly recommend. I took out a 20-mile hike on. It was just awesome. And also it was relatively easy because it was just flat. And you go through these beautiful mountains, and they have hikes up the mountains through it. People take these tours and then they stop at these little inns or bed and breakfasts. It's really neat. So that's my vacation advice. Good advice, huh? So, steamboats. Robert Fulton in 1807, an American. So even though the Industrial Revolution and the steam engine began in Britain, he would make the first workable steam engine. The first attempts in Britain kept blowing up. And because they blew up, that's why Fulton's steamboat would be called, even though it was named the Claremont, it would be called Fulton's Folly. Fulton's Folly. Because the steam engine was so unstable, it kept breaking or blowing up. It worked. And the whole thing about interstate commerce would be the Claremont. And the thing about steam engine, now upstream, you don't need wind. You can haul a lot more goods. You might notice here, up until after the Civil War, and even long after that, they would have masts for sails too, for additional power in case the steam engine went out. And so I was just in San Diego last spring break, and they have a couple. They're called stern turbine engines by them, by 1870s, 1880s. You go tour them. San Diego's a pretty fun town, but they still have the masts for sails too, even though it's a steamboat. But the other big thing, besides going upstream without wind, they can be iron and then steel boats because they can be a lot heavier. So they can haul a lot more goods. They can have a keel and be a lot safer. And so the steamboat would change everything. Drop prices, would be huge. Oh, look at photographs. Everyone see that? Remember what I told you? Here he is in his mid-30s. He looks 12, doesn't he? So by then, if you take rivers you can navigate, especially in the South, and canals and a few roads, the United States is more connected than ever before. Nationalism. And so 1830. Look by 1830. It's a little bit more you can ship goods. But now, 3 weeks to this little tiny place called Chicago. Now it's only 2 days to Boston. I mean, it's closer. But it's still moving at 3 miles an hour. Here's the biggie, railroads. Railroads would be the key element of this. Now, railroads are really complex to be fought against. They use rails, horse-drawn rail cars to move coal for years. But you don't need to know Peter Cooper's Tom Thumb. That was the first American engine. But I would like you to know the first English engine. Chris, I'm not going to say it again. You have to sit up and pay attention. All right. The first railroad, or the first workable steam engine, was actually in Britain. So it was 1829 to 1830 they started using it. It was George Stephenson's The Rocket. And the Rocket, remember I talked about the rockets in the War of 1812? They call it the Rocket because it could move so fast, but here's the important thing, under its own power. It makes sense to call it the Rocket. It could whiz along. You might want to grab your desk. I'm telling you speeds that are going to be quite heady. 22 to 25 miles an hour for short bursts. And it could whiz along without refueling for 10 miles. That's still revolutionary. Actually, they needed water every 10 miles because it blew it out on steam. So you have to constantly refill the water. Steam engines could only go, even by the end of the century, could go maybe 30 miles and they need more water. The way it is. And then about 20 miles they needed more fuel. This is the first American one. Here is one of George Stephenson's rockets in the Train Museum in York, England. The biggest train museum in the world. So it's in northern England, getting close to Scotland. And I have a picture of me in front of that very same train But I'm not showing you that because my facial expression is, let's just say, interesting. I'm like, so moving on. So I was taking this picture, and I thought, I'm going to get a picture without anybody there. So I snapped it just as this guy walked in. Huh? I'm not on Facebook. I know what you're thinking too. I'm old, and I'm not on Facebook. It's so shocking. But yeah, so I'll ask around. Anybody know him? I'm out. Huh? He's over there? I'm guessing he's about 5'11", right? I look around 5'10", 5'10". But you get an idea of the train. And they just took train carriages, or horse-drawn carriages, and adapted them to the train. So they got out the side, which would still be pretty common in Europe until the 20th century. But it made sense. Here would be the water for the steam engine, and they used wood. Coal worked much better. Yeah.
How old is that?
That train, well, it was built in 1830. You know, they obviously kept repainting it. That train museum, I like trains, and it's really cool. You know, if you don't like trains, even if you don't like trains, it's still really cool. York is a fun town. And so that's an American one, and I love this one. Look at the carriages. Aren't they just like horse-drawn carriages? And they're riding on top like it's a carnival ride. Like, woo, 20 miles an hour, ah! And the soot and the ashes were coming from the fire. It was catching their hair on fire. That was supposedly one of the things. Like, ah, this is great. But that'd be another good one if someone came down the hall. I'm putting out the fire. I normally don't beat my head that much. I'll run into a wall. Yes?
Was that the specific reason that the chimney was so tall? That way
Yeah,
it would
exactly.
just back it?
Exactly, that's why. And the same thing for city, why they kept thinking we'll build smokestacks so high. So go to Anaconda and see that massive smokestack. The thought was it would go over, it would go in the atmosphere and not burn the city down.
Man, I wonder what's the atmosphere now.
Well, yeah. Moving on. And you can see that's the wood. That's a really cool picture. I just like that one. And the point is, I know it doesn't seem like much to us. It was remarkable to them. And so the first 13 miles of track was built in 1830 in the United States, the B&O Railroad. So in 1850, there's been a lot of track built. Every railroad had different width between the tracks. It's called gauge. All kinds of issues, but still, here's the biggie though. That's the decade that changed everything. Over 22,000 miles of track were built in the 1850s. And that's the decade. The Industrial Revolution was really impacting people. It's here to stay and it's never going away. And that world it created is here now. The old world's never coming back. And it would drop dramatically down to 3 cents a ton mile by 1860. Still more expensive than canals, but you don't have the issues of water, drought, ice, whatever it might be. And canals are really expensive to build. Railroads are very expensive, but not quite the same. You have to buy the land, there's issues involved, but this would be big. And think about what you need to build a railroad. This is going to fuel so much industry. Now, it's going to take a while. You know, you have trains, right? And they're coal, you know, and people are so used to horsepower. So there were efforts to have kind of hybrid animal engines.
There was a train that they made that's basically a wide treadmill. They put 4 horses on top of it.
There was efforts at that. But there's even more dramatic than this. Has anyone ever seen this picture? An effort to combine animals and, have you seen this one? Yeah. They attempted this, and it was maybe one of the more effective ones. Who put a cat on there? And who agreed? Dogs couldn't do it. You know, dogs just couldn't figure it out. Cats, that's a perfect train. I should add, anybody know what country this is?
New Jersey.
That's not a country. Russia. The cat's okay.
New York.
I said Russia. You didn't miss that?
Idaho.
Okay. So here's the thing about railroads. Railroads are not just transportation. It's not like railroads are an industry by themselves. To build railroads, you need steel, iron, wood, coal. We'll talk about this more. You need all the processes to build it. You need educated people to be able to run the railroad. Railroads were an industry. Railroads required industry, which required railroads, required industry, and built and built and built. Railroads themselves would eventually demand most of the goods of the Industrial Revolution. Railroads would fuel industrial growth in the United States and every place else that had railroads. Britain first, the US, and then quickly spread throughout Europe. And every country that was behind would be forever behind. And would be very difficult to come back. Forever behind as in for the next century. And would give huge advantages to countries that had railroads. But look at the United States. Speaking of advantages, that is about 9,000 miles. And you notice here, Boston was a key rail port. Chicago does nothing. Look what happened in 10 years. The amount of mainline track. Chicago became the biggest rail hub in the United States. The second biggest would be New York. But what do you notice about this? Where's the rail at? Where's most of it? What section? Do you see it? That's 1860, almost all the railroad and therefore industries in the north. I wonder if that will become an issue and something that will start the next year. What would start the next year? The Civil War. The United States, one of the biggest reasons the United States won the War of the Rebellion was that, or the Civil War. Nobody called it the War between the states. Yeah.
How expensive would you say it was to place all the tracks in this time frame?
Shockingly expensive. But we don't worry about the amount of money. But the point is, it's usually more expensive than one person could build. So they're going to need an entire new way of structuring business, an entirely new way, because one person really can't do it. Factories will change everything. And 1859, look how much things have changed. One day now, the entire Northeast corridor, shipping goods, day and a half to Chicago. It would take only 2 days, or 2 days to St. Louis, 3 days to New Orleans, all from New York. Okay, 6 weeks to get what's going to become Montana. Wasn't Montana yet, it's still Dakota Territory. Yeah.
So in this like 1860, how far did the railroads go and
How far the railroads would go?
Yeah.
We'll look at the map one more time.
But it just goes to sea or something.
Yeah, St. Joseph, which is just north of Kansas City. But Kansas City would actually become the second biggest rail junction. And it would get up to, into a tiny little city called St. Paul by the Civil War. And then it'd be steamboat going to get to Montana. Because Montana Territory is coming, 1863. And so that would change the world. So what happened because of the transportation revolution? Shipping costs dropped by half. And this was massive government aid. Mostly states at first, but eventually the federal government to business. The Oregon Trail would be 1840, 1839 to 1840s. But Oregon Trail, that's part of the reason why a lot of times they would start in Kansas City, Independence, right there, because it's by the river and the railroads, they can get there and then take off on the trail. And massive government aid. This is huge government aid. Just like today, the roads are built by the government. There would be no roads in Montana without the government, or basically no roads. And you see semis, there'd be no semis without roads, therefore without the federal government, because it'd be too expensive. So this is huge government aid. That's what happened here. After the Civil War, it's going to be massive federal government aid to a few railroads. But this is going to open up new markets all over. New markets, new transportation. I mean, look how the railroads spread. That's markets all over. But not only that, the cost to produce, but not just cost to produce manufactured goods, also for farmers will drop. They can ship more. They'll make potentially more profit. The biggest issue in manufacturing are the high cost. And then that means raw materials can get to factories. In Britain, it was the canals. In the United States, it'd really be the railroads where you could see this booming of factories. But more importantly, then the manufactured goods can be shipped and therefore made available in these new markets cheaper, so you can make a profit. The companies can't function unless their revenues are greater than their costs, aka profit margin. The transportation revolution would do all of that. So now people could make, or people now could, they went from having to produce goods, they could literally soon go to a store and get many things that are quite difficult to make. People are going to go from producers to families became consumers.
Was this the term that was actually used, or was it just called something else at that time?
Consumers and producers?
Yeah, was that what they used?
No, they didn't. We're using modern term, but the word consumer really came from this era. You can see that was not a word before.
Did they have anything else for it, or was it just, and the people that buy stuff?
Yeah, just the market. And it would change everything, because think about it. You had to make everything. You had to make everything. You had to make your cloth, your clothing. Because it's so hard to ship, you might be able to buy some. And make all the things you need, all the food, everything you need to survive. I mean, little things that you don't even think about today. Does anyone know how to make soap? How do you make soap?
Ask my mom.
So you don't know, but your mom knows. Okay, yeah. Huh? Okay. You make soap. Soap comes from pig fat. It's fat. You have to render it, and it reeks, but you render it. You know how yeah, it's fat. You know how difficult it would be to do that? Wouldn't it be easier to buy soap made from somebody else? It changed everything. No, we're not going to make soap. Yeah. Oh, yes.
I was going to say, doesn't natural soap just always know that? But the reason it smells good is because the stuff added into it. The soap itself doesn't really have a good smell.
Oh no, soap stinks. So that's why they add perfume. And also, therefore, you don't stink, but it cleans off. Yeah. And how soon did it take to lose all those old skills? 1 or 2 generations, it's all gone. It's all gone. And now you're dependent upon, now it's trucks to bring you the stuff in the United States, because we're very inefficient. So, speaking of that, so I'm graded the test. I did have a few people write down that the 3/5 compromise gave slaves 3/5 of the vote. I said people would do it, and people did it. Slaves can't vote. But yes, I had people write that. Also, I had 2 different people tell me about Alexander Hamilton as president. Was Hamilton president? We don't know. That is shrouded in mystery. So I'm going to show you a video clip that will explain this very carefully. All right. Yes, it's good. This will be on the test. That'll be on the test. Keep these really slow. Okay. Got a couple. Bye. He's talking about half. Okay. Could you just wait a while? While President Obama. I'll show you.
Yeah, Miller's Billboard.
He was the father of capitalism. And he was friends with Aaron Burr. Okay. So that clear things up? No more of this book-based learning. It's what you feel. Oh, one more thing we'll get to that. Who invented the telephone? No, Alexander Hamilton. We just saw it right there. Alexander Graham Bell. Yes. All right. No, Edison did not. Put your head down. Put your head down. Huh? Let's have a vote. Who wants? All right. So number 4. 3 was a biggie. 4. This is another American system. I'm sorry, but they're going to call interchangeable parts the American system too. Remember, we had 1 factor was War of 1812, Britain, and then 3 were transportation.
Okay.
I know.
That was all for part 3.
Yeah, 3's a biggie.
Wait, how many are?
It's 74. So get comfortable.
I thought 75.
We have a few. The Industrial Revolution is a big deal. So Eli Whitney was an inventor, so to speak, and muskets were a very hard, difficult thing to make by hand, but all of them were made by hand. Every musket was unique. So every Revolutionary War musket had to be made by hand, and if you fixed it, you had to literally construct a new part to fix it, because every gun musket was different. He claimed to have an idea where machines could make the parts of these muskets. A lathe to make the stock, a drill to drill through a rod of steel to make the barrel. Eli Whitney's probably better known for what other invention? Does anyone know? Have you heard of the cotton gin? Yeah. No, he didn't invent it. He stole it from a couple slaves in South Carolina, but they were slaves. So, yeah. And Whitney went to Thomas Jefferson. He wanted a contract to make muskets. And Jefferson, who loved machines and science, said, I have machines that can make these muskets. And Jefferson was overjoyed, but needed proof. Jefferson liked industry and machines. He was just worried about what that meant for workers and farmers. Whitney brought in a barrel full of parts of 10 different muskets, just scattered together, and dumped them on his desk. Yes.
Is this still in the 1850s?
No, this right here, this is 1807.
Okay, I thought we were still talking about 1850s. We were talking about like railroad.
No, because now we're done with that factor. Now we're to a new factor. So he dumped him on the desk, and Jefferson, like a little boy, remember Jefferson left office in 1809. Jefferson jumped on the desk, because he just like a little kid, like, oh, this is wonderful, and started making the muskets, just grabbing parts. Made 10 muskets. Disassembled them, mixed them up again, made 10 more. It blew his mind. Now today, we just kind of accept, at least for most things, you know, if a part breaks, you can buy a new part and put it in. Not everything, but you know, that's just normal. That was just unheard of for Jefferson. So he gave Eli Whitney the contract. Just blew his mind. Eli Whitney was lying through his teeth. He had not made any machines. He had them all handmade to all fit together. He was hoping he'd get the contract so he could build some machines. So he lied. He was able to build some in Springfield, Massachusetts, the Springfield Armory. They still make weapons there today. Different factory. Why? There, it was on a river valley, fast-moving stream to turn a wheel. And so Eli Whitney would kind of come up with this idea of interchangeable parts. In 1851, London had this, it's called the Great London Exposition, this big kind of fair. You ever heard of a World's Fair? It was the first one. And it was basically to show off how great Britain was. But the US had an exhibition there, and they had a bunch of these interchangeable parts. And even though Britain began the Industrial Revolution, the American parts blew the world away. And that's why they would start calling it the American system. Interchangeable parts. We accepted it was brand new. Anybody know the name of the machines that actually make the parts? Yeah. Well, that's an individual machine, but the generic name. They're called machine tools. Machine tools. Lathe, a lathe for the stock. Yeah. The basic one, his first machines were a lathe. And this is actually a black and white photo of his lathe. And that little wheel would be powered through a belt connected eventually to through a whole system to water. Here was a drill, this is the Harper's Ferry, to drill through the steel rod to make the musket barrel. And machine tools. These are the most valuable machines in the world. They're the ones who make the products. And therefore the workers operate the machines. And sometimes they'll call them robots. That was kind of a public relations thing in the 1980s to show all these arms making it. They're not really robots. They're just machines. They just want to make them sound more, like advanced and technological. They do that a lot. AI is a marketing gimmick. It's not really artificial intelligence. It's still algorithms, and it's all mathematical formulas done by people. Huh?
Pattern recognition, right?
Yeah, and it's all done by formulas made by men. They're not. So AI it's a very effective marketing scam, but it's not really artificial intelligence.
Yeah, even today, machines.
Oh yeah, by far.
Like at the school, I think our cheapest machine in there is 30,000.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's that cheap. It must be pretty small.
We just got a new CNC lathe and actually that one was $75.
And it's very small. What country in the world makes the most valuable machine tools today? Good guess. China wants to be.
Japan.
Yeah. Good guess. No. U.S. used to. You don't know, so don't. Germany. Did you say Germany? Oh yeah, I didn't hear it. Germany, yeah. Germany.
Why is that?
Just Germany is very technological. Yeah. Huh?
100% sure.
No, it's Germany.
Machine tools?
Yeah, for making the most valuable machine tools in the world. Yeah, that's like up Germany. Germany. No, it's Germany. I don't care where you bought, but Germany. And the thing about it is Germany. That's why they're the biggest import. They have the biggest net importing country in the world. It's Germany because of machine tools. Yeah. So, what do we call these machines? They're called capital. Capital. Capital is the means of production. That's the machines. And yes, the entire economic system will come out of this. That's why the Industrial Revolution would create this. Capitalism is so much different than the market economies before because it now evolved one person owning the machines. Now, that's the means of production. People, when they say capital, a lot of times they'll talk about capital meaning money. Well, no, it's the means of production. So it's the factory, the roof, the fuel. But why do they say money? Because you need money to buy it. And so that's the big and this would change everything. Whoever owns the machines now has immense power. Or I should add one thing. If you're a bank, your money is your capital. You know, that makes sense. And so that leads directly to number 5, the factory system. Therefore, whoever owns the machine tools, the capital, builds a warehouse for them. What's a term for a warehouse? A factory. A factory for all the machines. And now, instead of this cottage industry where workers are working at home, labor is now centralized in one spot. And there's one owner, either a person or an entity, owns these things. This is radical stuff. So here's a textile mill, and here's a iron works in Pennsylvania. Factory is a term from India, which means warehouse. So the British, when they first started, they just called it that to differentiate it from other warehouses, and now it's just accepted that we think a factory is worldwide. But originally it meant warehouse, which kind of makes sense, a warehouse for machines. But this, now, everything changes, and now production is here. This is radically different. And more people are going from working on their own at home, deciding how they work and how hard and how fast and when, to someplace else where you're told what to do. And you have to do it or you starve. This is radically different. It starts with textiles in New England. Why New England? Fast-moving streams. So here's a textile mill in Lowell. Here's all the belts pulled by water. You got to have fast-moving streams to turn the wheel. Now, Britain began this. And they began in northern England and Scotland because of the mountains, fast-moving streams. That's where kilts came from. Factories. Do anybody know why? It was traditional for Scots who were used basically forced in very cheap, miserable jobs. But both men and women in Scotland wore like long shirts tied with a belt. A long shirt down to the knees. Shirt. That was the outfit. That's what you wore. You might have different colors for your different groups, your families. Well, the problem is if it gets caught in the textile mill and catches the shirt, what happens?
Yeah, sucked in.
All of you are sucked in. So an Englishman invented, okay, you want to wear your shirt, you keep that same style, a kilt. So if the kilt gets caught, it would just rip off at the waist. And then ironically, it became a really valuable thing in Scotland.
We're not allowed to wear long sleeves.
Makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
There's no emergency stop.
And that's probably significantly safer than these old mills. So Samuel Slater, he memorized a textile mill in England. England tried everything to keep that technology within England. So there was huge fines if you tried to steal the design for a textile mill. He memorized, which is just amazing. Now let's be clear, people back then had so much better memories than people today. It's not even funny. We're not even, well, you guys aren't in the same realm, I'm old. Actually, no, I have better memory than you do. Because I have less technology. Technology whittles away your memory. Doesn't mean I'm smarter, it just means I have a better memory. My parents had a better memory than me, and so on. It's just the way it is. He memorized the entire thing, brought it back just before the War of 1812, and built the first textile mill. And then that took off just when the British blockade and they needed the textiles. Yeah.
Could he have had photographic memory?
You know, he might have very well had it, but fantastic memories were the norm then. So what we would call a photographic memory today would have been a normal memory in 1790. And there are some people with photographic memories. Does anyone have a photographic memory in here? How do you feel about people with photographic memories?
They don't exist.
We hate them.
It's a government line, like Hamilton
So-
not being president.
Last thing right down today, water power. Water power. Had to be by fast moving streams. You drop it with, and this is ancient. You know, this goes back thousands of years, water power. You see the first water powered mills back in ancient Sumeria, 5000 BC. But you drop it in, that turns a series of pulleys and cams. So you connect the cam, this turns the entire factory and belts through the entire factory. Now the problem with this is why factories are going to be so different. Once you drop that cam into the wheel, so it turns the whole factory, that's the power source for the whole thing. The factory's going. That means every single person has got to be working at the same time. You can't be sitting there going, you know, I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to go to the bathroom now. I'm going to eat lunch. Or I'm going to work slower. I don't feel good. No. Everybody's got to work together at the same pace, at the same rate. And then when it's time to take a break, they all have to take a break together because you have to have the power come on. That means you have to try to find a way to convince people to not do what's natural.
Feed.
They would beat. Or they would find some way to make people follow. Oh, you want? I have most of your scores done.
Even the ones, the ones I got by people yesterday.
I don't have. But I was not able to grade a lot of them. I just did not have time.
Don't take the credit.
So that's one of the things about when I had a. I do. Yeah. Exactly. So if you want to see your score real fast, come up here. I have most of them. Yeah, I have them on down.
Didn't go to sleep.
You did really well. One of them is.
I'll go clean.
I need a back, so just put it in. Yeah, you look great. I just showed it. I know you're saying.
You got me, right?
Just set it right. Put it in the basket.
You got started. Solid $2.
Yeah, you put them on.
How about that? So, but I'll give you a chance to redo it so you can.
Yeah.
The basket.
Yeah, put it in the basket. That'd be great. God, you're right on top. Huh? No. No. Did you have? Did this been no. No.
Okay, where do we put these? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
I got everybody's? Good.
Go.
Did I give you yours?
No.
think once I'm sure I do. 85. I thought checking my Oh, 16. I didn't like that question. I thought that's when I was going back and reading that. That's so don't worry about that. 13, I looked at that and I thought, yeah, I thought there was some difficult ones, but I thought 13 was hard.
Did you put 8 here? You know it's already 8.
Jeez.
Oh.
Don't you love that?
Yeah.
You did really well on your short IDs, missed a few. Multiple choice, you know. The high beat. It's good. So it says 85, but I put in the grade book 86.
It's Friday though.
It's just a weird day.
It really is. Thank you. So like, what is a better way to study? That's the hardest.
Multiple choice, it seems to me you have to go kind of like try to think about what it is and what it is. Think about that. What it is, what it led to. I gotta go find you. All right, so think about all string. Try to connect it to something else. Because every question I try to formulate an idea of this does this. That's what I'm thinking about. And some are a little bit easier, but some are a little bit more complex. And I know sometimes I go into minute details that don't seem like very minor. I'm really trying to get you to think of them. I have to be these careful. And so always think about relating to something else. And then the whole idea is this year goes by because these are connected. Then it becomes a lot of this. At least that's the idea.
I'll try that out next. I'll ask more questions.
And I will cover everything. You know, I will try to do it. I can't remember that concrete ones. Oh, you didn't have anything about Congress. You had to have Congress on it. Because Congress can make no law by it. That was the big thing there.
Well, it's not bad.
No, it's high B. I mean, you're a good shape.
It's just this class. I don't know why this one is, but this one's the one that's the most challenging.
Well, I think, you know, this is a kind of a college style way they do it. I think it's just different. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, it's just one. But the big thing is always think about relating it to something else. You know, go back through and relate it. Because all of them are like that. But the thing about multiple choice search is doing multiple choice. Hard multiple choices are hard. And they should be. But they should be. But I looked at 13 and I decided that was a little bit too cool. That was like, oh, that was a little bit too narrow. The rest of them, I didn't see that as much. But there's also, you know, that famous thing about short IDs. That the thing, you know, the thing about multiple choice. You know, there's always going to be like 3 or 4 answers that look the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's.
Oh well.
You did well.
Yeah. Anyways, enjoy your lunch.
We'll see you.
See you Monday.
It's really cool now. It's got a white thing. I used to have a fallout shelter thing on there and it got taken off. It's so sad. Oh, Kit Kat. Kit Kat. Wow. I got them upstairs very quickly. Then I'll be back and we'll finish up the movie. Hope you like it.